Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. You know, there are places you can put yourself that you don't want to go. You can put yourself down or you can put yourself in harm's way, but there's one place you can put yourself that you do want to go, and that is you can put yourself first.
This is something that concerns the vast majority of people. Generally, people are really good, they're really nice, and they've been taught somewhere along the way, usually by their parents, not to be selfish, right? So what does that mean? It means you put other people first. Well, this is all a matter of degree. It's not an either-or, but here's the problem. If you tend to put other people ahead of yourself repeatedly, again and again and again, you just overlook your own particular needs, well, that could end up being a good intention that runs afoul because you're not taking care of the person that is trying to be of assistance and help to other people. So if indeed you put yourself first and then behave in a selfish way, you could say that's a selfish thing to do. They're always putting themselves first. But to be charitable and philanthropic and generous, you've got to put yourself first. It's just that the behavior is then followed by doing for other people.
Yeah, there's a difference between selfish and self-centered. I mean, selfish is I take care of me, the heck with you. But self-centered is I take care of me so I can best take care of you. And that's really what we're talking about. You know, we're always talking with the metaphor of when you get in an airplane and they say, you know, if the cabin pressure drops and the masks come down, you're supposed to put yours on first. Well, that's a really wonderful example because you really do need to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. So if the intention of putting yourself first is becoming the best you can be so you can help the most people in the best ways that you possibly can. Well, that's self-centered. I mean, but if you're not going to be self-centered, where are you going to be centered? You're going to be centered somewhere else? You know, you've got to be self-centered, but it's not selfish. It's selfless. In fact, it's living a life of philanthropy. It's living a life of giving and caring and growing and helping other people as well. So we're saying it all has to start with this putting yourself first. Now, what does that mean? That means you have a choice of deciding who goes first, you know, whose needs get met first. If it comes down to my needs are not getting met by meeting your needs, for example, if I'm in a situation where I'm with a pretty much unpleasable person and I'm trying to please them over and over and over and over again, and it's like it feels selfish to take care of my needs, I'm wasting time and energy. I'm not pleasing them. They're unpleasable. I'm not pleasing me. I've got to put myself first in that situation and say, is it valuable to me to offer any more to this person that seems to be completely unpleasable? Is it draining me? Is it taking away of my energy? I have to look after myself. I won't have enough of me left to take care of anybody else if I waste it all on this totally unpleasable person out here.
I think this whole confusion really dances around the bias in our society, the belief that everything should be absolutely clear to us. There are no absolutes in life. If according to philosophy, there is such a thing as an absolute, it would have to be capitalized, and it would have to be a reference to something divine and beyond understanding, because in the world of form, things are always true to a relative degree. It could be almost absolutely true, like 99% true, or maybe like 40 or
even an absolute vacuum or even absolute zero is still
exist.
Not exactly absolute.
No, and yet we long for it, and we're conditioned to look for it and strive for it, and it's not realistic. What it leads to is a view of the world as you or me, and a view of our choices as this or that. And so this then gets in the way of you and me and this and that. And so here we are. Is it you or me? Do I put myself ahead of you, or do I put you ahead of me? How about and? How about what can I do that's in your best interest? And the best thing I can do for you is make sure that I'm coming out of abundance and prosperity and balance, and that I've checked in, and that I'm not projecting my needs upon you. If I take care of myself, if I know that I'm whole and complete, that I'm coming from a balanced and centered kind of a place, then what I can do for you is going to be greatly enhanced. Doesn't that make perfect sense? And yet, I know I had one of these discussions I'll remember my whole life in college dorms all over America. I'm sure every term there are these arguments about whether there is such a thing as a fact, right? I remember this argument from my freshman year. We went all night. We went to like 4:30 in the morning, arguing back and forth whether there was such a thing as a fact. Well, we just didn't have the language. What we were really arguing was, are there things that are absolutely true, or is everything relatively true? And as you study more and expose yourself to the philosophy that stands behind all science, that's what a PhD, regardless of the field, that's what a PhD is. It's a doctor of philosophy, a philosophy in this field or that. And core philosophy teaches there are no absolutes except maybe divinity, and I will leave that to you. But certainly in the world of form, things are always relatively true. And I bet you're struggling with that idea right now.
Well, I mean, an absolutely solid wall is mostly space, and mostly it's space between electrons. The vast majority of that, what we call solid, absolutely solid. It's not really. It's all perception. So absolute doesn't really exist outside of our perception,
I had a discussion with a guy the other day, and he was talking about absolute evil. And, of course, they go to the extreme when they want to make an argument. So he said Hitler is an example of absolute evil.
But Hitler liked puppy dogs.
Well, but, it's hard to argue on behalf of Adolf Hitler, right?
Hey, I'm Jewish. I'm not a big fan of the dude.
And that's often what happens. You talk about your ability to promote healing, and people go to cancer and heart disease. And, well, wait a minute. You don't prove a situation by going to the extreme, but that's what people do when they're locked in. I think the right wing in America, the reason they often are labeled reactionary is that this is their reaction. They want absolutes. They want things to be absolutely right or absolutely wrong. And you see, the problem is, if all you've got is right and wrong, then your whole world is a true or false exam. There's no multiple choice. There's no what's the best right answer, okay? There's no none of the above or all of the above. And we need that in the real world. You can't reduce everything to either or. If you've ever watched people testify in a court of law, this is part of the challenge when an attorney says yes or no. I only want yes or no. Well, I'm sorry, I can't give you only yes or no.
Especially if you asked, have you stopped beating your wife yet?
It's got to be qualified.
Yeah, right.
Because all truth is relative truth. So apply that to our topic today, which is putting yourself first. It's not putting yourself first instead of caring about other people. We're doing the program to press the point that putting yourself first is the best thing you can do for the people you want to be of service to.
Right. It is in your self-interest to be of help to other people because, to me at least, the second best thing that we can possibly feel is the feeling that comes from helping other people. Number one is being in love. I mean, there's really nothing that quite matches that. But second to being in love, the feeling you get, just the feeling you get from helping other people is like the most wonderful feeling. There's a reason for that. It's the right thing to do. It's about seeing a bigger picture. It's about seeing how I'm not alone in this. I'm part of this thing called us, this humanity thing. For example, putting myself first in a marriage doesn't mean that I'm more important than her. It means she's not more important than me either. It's myself now expands to include this thing, this third entity called a marriage. It's she and me as a entity. And that, because it includes my interests and her interests, is more important than my interests alone or her interests alone. But that doesn't mean she's more important than me or I'm more important than her. It means I put myself first, so anything that doesn't include my interests too, and certainly the marriage includes my interests too, I'm not going to put first. I'm going to put first myself and anything that includes my interests in it. And yet, helping other people is in my interest. It's one of the most interesting things that human beings can do. So we're talking about putting yourself first. What we're saying is know where you're starting from, know what assets you're working with, know who you are as a being, and work on making that a better and better being so that you can be of even greater and greater service to humanity.
Know who you are. Boy, let's not gloss over that, because here is the root of all fear, anxiety, and stress. You know, our brains tell us that fear and anxiety and stress has to do with some sort of danger. Apprehension and worry and nervousness is about some sort of threat. And that's like hardly ever the case. What fear and anxiety is about, stress, apprehension, whatever word you want to apply to it, is confusion and ignorance, a lack of awareness about who you are. So putting yourself first really means, first of all, managing the fear in your life by understanding yourself. There are many spiritual and religious teachers that have said, become fearless in order to love, for God is love. What does that mean, to become fearless? How do you stop being afraid in the face of danger? Indeed, if you're a Christian, what does it mean to love your enemy? Not even, it's hard enough to love people you don't like, but here we're told to love your enemy? What if that means don't be afraid of them, and even more importantly, don't frighten them? Don't use fear as a weapon. Now think about the amount of fear that is put upon you every day. Advertising, for example, is all fear-based. I mean, there are elements of wouldn't you love to do this and wouldn't it be great if you had that, but they're all couched in terms of, look how horrible it would be if you didn't. What would people think if your breath is bad or you use the wrong soap or drive an embarrassing car, whatever it is? They're always couched in fear. And it's so much easier to motivate people based on fear that you have to sort of rewire yourself at some point in your life until you really are clear that anytime somebody tries to frighten you, even if they insist they're doing this in your interest, they really want to help you. If they're trying to frighten you, they may be well-intentioned, come to think of it, but it's still the backward strategy. The best thing they can do, that anyone can do for another person, is encourage them. I was talking to a person the other day about racing, and this fella had some experience, and he said, you know, race car drivers are taught to never look at the wall. Do you know why? And I said, yeah, Steve and I talk about this in our programs all the time, because you go where you look. He said, yeah, so instead, a race car driver is always looking for an open space up ahead. Isn't that smart? So the golfer, does it make sense to look at the sand trap or look at the lake or look at that big tree in the way and try to avoid it while you're looking at it? That's not the way the mind works. Instead, you look at the pin. You look at what you do want. So in the same way, the best thing you can do to help somebody is to orient them in a positive direction with encouragement and enthusiasm. Tell them to persevere, that they can do it, that you believe in them. This idea of using fear, watch out for this and be careful of that, and boy, you sure don't want to do this. It's like coming over to my garden, getting down on your hands and knees and very carefully planting the most aggressive, invasive weeds that you could possibly find in my garden. Why would you do that? That's not helping. You think you're helping by telling people to watch out for this and be careful of that. That's not of the highest service to people.
You know, you remember that time when Johnny Carson told a joke about there being a toilet paper shortage, and then everybody in the whole country went out and bought toilet paper, and there became a toilet paper shortage. When you're proselytizing bad things to happen, you know, warning people about this, and all of a sudden becomes part of the consciousness of people that this bad thing is inevitable, I think that contributes. I think that's contributory negligence. You know, that's like being negligent of the fact that thoughts tend to create reality. They tend to push things to happen, especially thoughts of large numbers of people. So, putting yourself first is one of the keys is recognizing to not just go with the group thought. Like, wait a minute, my thought is different than other people's thought. I want to make sure that I don't just agree with everything just because they're saying it. I want to be above that. I want to take a look at me first. Does this fit for me? Not just because other people are saying it. Does this fit for me? And that's a lot of what putting yourself first is about. It's looking out for yourself, not just going with what everybody else believes. Looking for your unique individual self. One very important place, I think, that you need to put yourself first is to recognize that there's nobody better than you, nobody more worthy than you, nobody more deserving than you, nobody that has a higher place in the world because we were born in a better. You have exactly as much opportunity to create yourself, being who you want to be. So, with that in mind, and this has always been one of my, really passionate pleas. Why not aim for the bullseye? Like, why not imagine great outcomes? Why not imagine that you're aiming for your life to be this fantastic, magnificent life? You may not get there, but the journey toward that is the greatest of all journeys. You'll get as far as you let yourself get, but the journey on the way toward what you're imagining that you really, really want the most is such a fun journey. It just feels so good to say, I could be the world's greatest husband. I mean, I may not get there. I may end up being only the 197,312th greatest husband. Who knows? But why not aim for that? I could be, in history books as the most powerful motivator in history. That probably I'm not going to go down in that way. But hey, I've made an impact, and I'm making a bigger impact every single day. Why not aim for the best you can imagine? Most people don't put themselves in a category of being like one of the best people in the world, so they don't deserve one of the best outcomes in the world. But if you put yourself first and recognize, well, yeah, I was born with gifts, talents, and abilities, and I developed early in my life certain gifts, talents, and abilities, and other people have different ones, so I can never be Magic Johnson, I could never be, but I could be the greatest me that ever lived, and what that could be if I put myself first and realize that, hey, I'm the only one that creates my own limits. That could be something truly magnificent. That could be a life that you could look back on and say, hey, I really lived.
It makes absolutely no sense to dwell upon comparing yourself to other people. If you want to benchmark yourself occasionally to see how you're doing, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, all you can do is be the best you that you can possibly be. We're all unique. We've got fingerprint evidence and now DNA proof of our uniqueness. We look out in nature and we see a universe that bends over backwards to avoid replication. It wants diversity. It celebrates diversity. Everything is different. Everything is unique. Not just this full array of species, different life forms, animals and plants, but within a given species, unique individuals. And that's the way humans are, too. So why is it not good enough to be the best me that I can be? And if it is, how would you know? You have to put yourself first. You have to check in. Now, what else do we need to look at if putting yourself first begins with managing your fear? Where do we go next? You might think to our thoughts. Steve and I have talked about performance. What's in the middle? All right, between relaxing and managing our fears and our anxieties, being positive and enthusiastic instead, goal-oriented. Now do we go to our thoughts? When it comes to understanding the self, your feelings are going to teach you much more about your uniqueness and your individuality than your thoughts. First of all, thoughts can be wrong, and feelings are never wrong. Emotional feelings or any other kind of feeling, a physical feeling, they're never wrong. They could be misinterpreted, but that's your thoughts, which are often wrong. You've taken many tests. Even the DMV test, you probably missed one or two. Oh, darn, I thought that was right. Yeah, of course. That's the deal with thoughts. You get some right, you get some wrong. But when it comes to being sensitive to your feelings, especially if you've managed your anxiety, those things are never wrong, especially if you just experience it intuitively and resist the temptation to use your thoughts to slice it and dice it and carve it up into little pieces and analyze it logically and applying reason in 10 different ways. Much of what people say are their feelings are really their thoughts about their feelings.
Yeah, that's so very true. And, so when we talk about putting yourself first, let's dice it down a little bit. Which self are we putting first? Putting yourself first. Well, we started with that idea of the fear. You have to deal with the fear. That's the ego. That's the thoughts and the ego part going, the world is dangerous and I have to watch out. And, we did a whole great show on how you have to feel anxious to be safe. I'm not safe if I let down my guard. Well, we know you have to feel safe to feel safe. So once we acknowledge and recognize that we're in a safe environment, then we can get into feeling safe. And once we feel safe, emotions, which are, as Michael said, always what they are, they're never wrong, they're just what they are. It's not like they're logical or illogical, they're non-logical. Logic doesn't apply any more than logic applies to color, it just doesn't have anything to do with it. But emotions, and when they're calm, especially the emotion of feeling safe, is the portal through which you get to the ability to step back and observe your body, your thoughts, your feelings, the higher consciousness, the higher self. And really, that's the self that you want to put first. The one that's not fear-based, the one that's love-based, the one that doesn't yell, the one that, in fact, whispers with a very loving voice to you. You don't always hear it because when you're stressed out, there's all those other loud voices going on. But the self you want to put first you have to start with quieting the thoughts of fear, and then you move into the feelings of safe. And then from that narrow, awake place, you find that as the portal into this recognizing you are the awareness, you are the consciousness, you are the observer of the fact that there are thoughts, there are feelings, there is a body. I'm not like a body that has this spirit inside of it. I'm this spirit that just happens to have this body connected to it at this point. And that concept, that I'm part of the all concept, that self, the self that is the higher consciousness, is ultimately the one that you want to put first.
This whole topic of feelings is curious to me because there are physical feelings and there are emotional feelings. I'm not sure there is such a thing as a mental feeling.
Intuition, maybe. It's sort of like a mental feeling, although it's not. It's sort of it's semantics.
To me, that's more emotional.
Yeah. Right.
In fact, I would even argue that when we relax and calm our emotional feelings, when we still the body, quiet the mind, and calm the emotions, all three of those happen together, right? Just largely with breathing, closing your eyes to reduce stimulus, and letting go of physical tension. You get all three. You get physical relaxation, you get emotional peace and tranquility, you get mental calmness and quietude. There is a rarefied, refined frequency of feelings that remains, that are not physical feelings and they're not emotional feelings, and they can be interrupted by intuition, those explosive ahas. I'm talking, I guess, about a spiritual feeling of contentment, of accepting that your best is good enough, that you're actually not behind or disorganized, you're doing really well, and you're right on schedule. Have you ever noticed how those eureka illuminations, those intuitive aha experiences, always seem to arrive with a confirmation rush, with a sense of, boy, that's it. Wow, there's just no doubt about it. It's just bam, up and down your spine. You get this, to me, it's a confirmation rush that says, here's this new information, and not only is it new information, the light bulb comes on, but you know it's true. It's just unshakable. And you did not get there through logic. As Steve said, intuition, these rarefied, refined, high frequency, if you will, feelings above emotion and physical sensation, are not illogical, they're just non-logical. They have nothing to do with the process of logic. They just, well, I remember interviewing years ago the author Joseph Chilton Pearce, and he described them as arriving full-blown. Whether he said thoughts that arrive full-blown or feelings that arrive full-blown or an awareness that arrives full-blown, I don't remember, but I do remember the full-blown part, the idea that, boing, you know exactly what we're talking about. I think a big part of putting yourself first so that you can be the best you can be for other people is managing your anxiety, quieting yourself in all three areas, stilling the body, calming the emotion, quieting the mind, so that you can be open and receptive to a more comprehensive, intuitive understanding of things. Reading another person, empathizing deeply, right? Feeling the and instead of the you or me. The and instead of the this or that. And communicating from that place. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that really the best thing you can do for another person? Steve mentioned the oxygen mask on the airplane, which we've used for decades as an example. Well, it's a darn good example because they have to tell you every time you get on an airplane. It's not in our nature to think of ourselves first. We're in an emergency or a crisis. You get all freaked out. What do? Well, some people behave in selfish ways. There were stories of people on the Titanic, men that would dress up in women's clothing to try to get on those very first lifeboats. There's always a few of those people. But by and large, people are really good. And even in an emergency or a crisis situation, they're more interested in helping other people than taking care of themselves. Here, let me help you with that oxygen mask, and help this little old lady over here in the wheelchair with hers, and make sure the baby has her oxygen mask on, forgetting that you need oxygen too. See, that's what we mean by putting yourself first. It's not a selfish thing to do, except when followed by selfish behavior. And you're not a selfish person. You understand that this is not an or, that whenever you do for another, you benefit. The gift is in the giving. When you give expecting to get something in return, you're really not giving, and the process doesn't work. But when you give freely, expecting and needing nothing in return, not even to be acknowledged, that's when the magic happens. That's why, again, so many spiritual teachers talk about performing your acts of generosity and philanthropy and charity secretly. You don't tell anybody, because if you start bragging and putting your name on buildings, the magic is great. It's great to give money to build a wing for a new hospital, but when you put your name on it, you reduce the magic. If you do it secretly and quietly, the rewards are enormously enhanced, and a lot more good comes from it.
So in putting yourself first, that means that you can look for some good things to do for yourself. And we mentioned too, of course, being in love is a wonderful thing to do for yourself, and helping other people, another truly wonderful thing to do. But there's a couple other wonderful things you can do for yourself, putting yourself first. And one is forgive. Forgive yourself, forgive others, let go of those grudges and all that stuff that you're holding on to that's weighing you down. And the other is gratitude, appreciation. That's one of the nicest gifts you can give yourself, and it's free. In fact, causes you to grow and get better. And so in putting yourself first, I think each day take some time to find something to forgive, somebody to let go of a grudge or regrets or remorse or embarrassment or shame or any of that negative stuff. You don't have to hold on to it. Don't let go of the memory of it. You'll still remember it happened. Just let go of the charge it has on you. And the way you do that is you feel safe with it. You just imagine it and you breathe deeply with it and show your mind that it has no power over you anymore, and just let it be. It can be a memory, but you let go of the grudge. You don't hold it. It's like with that old line about holding a grudge is like taking a hot rock to throw at somebody else. You burn yourself on the way. So let all that go, and then take some time every day to be grateful to yourself and to everything there is to be grateful for, and to it's such an easy way to happiness. It's such an easy way to feel better about who you are, is to be grateful for all that you have and were given and have done, and feel appreciating of all the people that have served and helped you in your life, and appreciate all the opportunities you've had to serve and help. It's easy to do. It's easy to overlook, too. So if you're going to put yourself first, it means I deserve some time, even just a few minutes here and there. I deserve some time to do something truly indulgent, like forgiving all those people that I don't have to hold on to grudges anymore, and feeling appreciative and feeling gratitude for all the wonderful things. I'm gonna be just really indulgent and take some time for me and put myself first and really do some wonderful things for myself, letting go of the pain, holding on to some of the wonderful joy. It's just, it's a little self-indulgent, but it makes you feel better, and it makes you a greater giver when you realize how much you've received.
I'm glad you came back to gratitude, because I think you're right. I think that can very easily be overlooked, because no matter how well off you are, and this is relative too, right? It's easy to look at the struggle. I mean, I'm sure billionaires could tell you what a hard life they have, right? And how difficult it is to be a billionaire. And it's like, excuse me, would you like to trade places? Well, no, but I have my problems too. Well,
Mark Twain wrote The Prince and the Pauper with that exact, they looked the same, but they switched roles, and they both still had a real hard life, It's never that easy.
That you would mention that. Only last night did I see that film with Errol Flynn for the very first time in my life.
Amazing.
Yeah, just last night. You're right. And it's a little bit the story of Siddhartha, too, of the Buddha, who starts out as a prince and then deliberately becomes a pauper to create the empathy and the understanding. That does lead to gratitude and appreciation. And there was a Middle Ages prophet, a mystic. I'm trying to remember if it was Jacob Boehme or Meister Eckhart, one of those two, said, if the only prayer you ever say is one of gratitude, that would suffice. Think about it. Just wherever you are, and whatever the condition, no matter how oppressed you may feel, no matter how difficult you think life may be, no matter how unfair it may seem or appear to be from time to time, if you can focus on gratitude, well, thanks for the goodness, thanks for this meal, thank you for this day, thank you for my vision, thank you for my friends, thank you for this sunshine. Thank you for these flowers. I mean, thank you for the awareness that allows me to remember it's in my interest to stop and pay attention with gratitude to all of the richness in life. It will soften you, it will mature you, it will mellow you, it expands greatly your awareness. And again, it's just a very elegant and sophisticated form of positive thinking to be grateful, to take your attention off the negative, because again, if you dwell on the negative, like Jackie Stewart said, bang, the next thing you know, if you look at that wall to try to avoid it, you're driving right at the wall. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you slow down and think about it. Keep your eye on what you do want. So gratitude is a way of staying positive. That's putting yourself first. Now teach other people. You see, even if you're just modeling the behavior, that's important. But then teach as a parent, teach as a leader or a motivator in the workplace. Teach when you work with any civic organization or youth group. Teach these principles of service based on the idea that it's in everybody's interest. It's not a sacrifice to be of service to other people. It enriches you to help other people. It's not an or. That's the biggest lie that a reactionary could tell you. That in order to be of service to the community, you have to abandon self-interest. That's absurd. What could be more in your self-interest than being of service to the community and the greater good? Are you, after all, not part of that greater good? Well, of course you are.
Yeah, and you can be even more connected to people by putting yourself first. For example, to befriend instead of wait to be befriended. Put yourself first. You see somebody that's interesting to you, go out there and start the friendship, start the process. Put yourself first. Instead of waiting for it to come to you, go out there and initiate. Put yourself first. If you see something you really want, go be the first one to get it. I was just reading an article, the new Apple iPhone came out, and Steve Wozniak, the guy who co-invented Apple with Steve Jobs, was first in line waiting for that. He put himself first. He got all kinds of cool publicity for having done it, and it's a cool story.
He camped out overnight.
He did. He camped out overnight to buy the new iPhone, and sort of it was like a loving prayer to Steve, but for somebody I never really knew. I met him. I actually did meet him, but somebody I never really knew. I miss him. He was a powerful, wonderful influence. He was the Henry Ford, the Tesla, the Edison of our day, I think. He'll go down in history as a really amazing and unique being. And a guy who absolutely put himself first. He said, I want this, and he got to put himself out to get it. And nothing was going to stop him. And that's what it really takes. Putting yourself first, thinking, I deserve this much. And then with that comes the persistence, and when you believe that you deserve, then you just keep going. And you'll get as far as you'll get. Michael said it earlier. You never apologize for your best. That's all. You do that, you did it. And if you put yourself first and you achieved that, then you achieved everything you could possibly have achieved, and then you get to feel really great about that. So put yourself first. Nobody's more important than you. Nobody's better than you. You have no betters, so to speak. There are people with other talents than yours, and you have other talents than theirs. But discovering who you are and what talents, gifts, and abilities that you have, and working on those and developing those and being the best you can be, that's all you could do, and that's a lot to do. Never happen if you don't put yourself first.
So let's do an audio journey, a narrow, awake, focused passion process. The alpha brainwave level, let's head there, our paradise place where we find the self that knows what it means to be first. All right? Not the egoic, separative, fear-based self that thinks it's first instead of others, but the true self, the essence of who you really are, the higher self, if you will, the solar self, the spiritual self, that knows that putting this self first always benefits the greater good. So you have to play with the idea of self a little bit. This is the capital S self that we find in paradise. So close your eyes, sit back and relax as you begin to take first one and then another nice, slow, deep breaths. Inhaling slowly through the nose. Hold for a beat as you peak. And as you breathe out, exhaling out, feel the letting go in the body. Identifying as the one who releases.
And feels the peace with the release. And with every breath that you exhale, more muscle tension does release, and you feel even yet more peace and more at peace as you release. and you feel your mind slow down, and you feel your body relax, and all the anxiety or apprehension or fear that was there, it's now gone. You feel untaxed. And you get a sense of your thoughts becoming more quiet, feelings becoming more clear. And there becomes a voice, a quieter voice, that comes from love instead of fear. And that voice, as your mind quiets down, you become more able to hear. And that voice is the voice of the self, the one we suggest that you put first. That voice represents the higher self. The ego voice, your worst. So this voice, which is the best of you, instead of all the rest of you, this voice, make the choice to hear, the one that whispers and comes from love, not yells and comes from fear. Put yourself first, and this is the self to which we refer. This is the self. Relax, and you'll be sure.
Sometimes at a sporting event or maybe a parade, you'll see a dad lift his little boy or little girl up onto his shoulders so that they can see better. I'd like you to imagine doing that for your egoic self, the little child in you that is motivated so often by fear. A fear that if you don't put yourself first instead of others, they'll get ahead of you, or you'll be the sucker. After all, life is unfair, and you often get the short end of the deal. Put that part of yourself up on your shoulders and show them the view from up here. The greater, grander perspective that the love-based higher self sees, which is there's always a reward for this sense of self in being of service to others. That simply means helping out. It means kindness, and it means humility. It means generosity and tolerance and patience. It means conditioning the fear-based self to stop anytime it feels like life is an either-or, some sort of tug-or-war. It's a jungle out there, a you or me world, and say, yeah, maybe in ancient times it was like that, when there was slavery and people were fed to the lions for entertainment, gross injustices in the world, and certainly there's no shortage of injustice even today, but we're becoming more civilized. We really are getting better and better. It's just a slow process, so put your eye on the improvements. Identify and acknowledge the evolution of awareness in humanity. That little by little and bit by bit, the family of man is awakening to an understanding that it's always in my interest to care about you. And you. And that person over there, and this group down the block. Love your neighbor begs the question, where does the neighborhood end? Who is not my neighbor? Until once the question is resolved and you realize there is no one here on this planet who is not your neighbor. The family of man, humanity, is your responsibility. And it's in our interest as individuals, every single one of us, to want what's best for other people. So put this higher self first, up here, up on your shoulders, where you can remember, oh yeah, the best thing I can do for myself is be of service to everybody else, and the best thing I can do for them is to put myself first.
Satisfy your thirst, eat well to sustain, and imagine the best instead of the worst. You've everything to gain. There's no one better than you. No one deserves any more. So imagine the best you can possibly imagine, and then journey toward. It's the journey, not the destination. The experience on the way and all of those sensations. Put yourself first. Take care of your needs. Satisfy many desires. Put yourself first, but come from love, not fear. Come from the voice that is higher. So if you question your route, relax, take root, and let your mind explore. Is this coming from fear or love? Do I really need any more? Put yourself first means appropriate, clear, coming from love instead of from fear. Put yourself first, and you'll surely see that first is where you deserve to be.
Bring this awareness with you as you prepare to return to the waking state, remembering in your mind's eye what you'll see in just a few moments when you finally open your eyes. But allow yourself this period of transition, reorienting from narrow awake to wide awake. As you inhale slowly now, fill your lungs, hold, and now as you exhale, relax, and open your eyes wide awake, feeling fine, refreshed, all energized and rejuvenated, feeling better than before.
Yeah, this is a tricky subject because, again, most people were brought up with some kind of message that it's selfish to do that, to put yourself first, that take care of others first. Even CEOs are always talking about how, there's so much responsibility to their employees and to the customers, and they don't have time for themselves. People who seemingly should have everything often don't put themselves first, don't have time for themselves. So I think balance is a real important key, but one of the most important lessons I learned is that you can't really have a relationship until you understand that the relationship becomes something that is part of the self. It's not like separate from the self. The self is included in it. And so it's not her or me. It's always her and me. And that becomes a grander self, And in the same way, the self is part of the self of humanity, and we can't separate ourselves from that part of the self either. But putting yourself first isn't a selfish thing to do. It may be self-centered, but as we said at the outset, if you're not self-centered, where are you going to be centered?
You got to play around with these words, this whole idea of self. I mean, we named our series Finding Yourself, and we capitalized self, all the letters, self, for a deliberate reason. I mean, here, consider this. Self-conscious, you would think, means to be aware of who you are. But in fact, self-conscious has somehow come to mean concern about what other people think of you. Words are funny, and we don't know the self, so any word that's got self in it Like self-confidence, self-esteem, self-conscious, put yourself first, deserves a second look and probably a third look, and you gotta work with that, because there are these polarities. There is the shadow side. There is the selfish self in each and every one of us, and when we're frightened, that's the way we behave. So to release your fear and refuse to be afraid, becoming fearless is how you know the truth of who you are. You have nothing to fear. Thanks for being with us. Join us next week as our premium audio series on personal empowerment and personal development continues right here at FocusedPassion.com. Hope you'll use the link at the bottom of the newsletter to let your friends know about this, and likewise that share one with a friend device at the bottom of the built-in player when you log in at FocusedPassion.com. They'll appreciate it. We'll appreciate it. Everybody will benefit from that. Be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.